So have you ever been in Russia and as if to highlight the fact that you don't know who the greatest superhero of all time is, a meteor lights up the sky to remind you in its superhero-esqueness? Have you ever done that?
I can't say I have.
Happens.
But we are going to bring that meteor crashing down and try and figure out who the greatest superhero is of all time.
I'm not sure how much sense that made, but let's do it anyway. So it is the penultimate show in the round of 32.
Yes,
the
it is.
Penultimate, which means second to last, in case you didn't know. And we're going to kick off.
And you've just insulted the intelligence of all of our audience.
Hey, I didn't know what penultimate was until Live 8. And everyone was like, penultimate act, The Who. And I was like, well, this is the last one. I was wrong. So you never know. We're going to kick right off with Animal Man versus Green Lantern. You're going to talk about Green Lantern. I'm going to talk about Animal Man. Take it away.
Oh, cool. All right, I'm going first. Brilliant. So I'm mainly focusing on Hal Jordan as Green Lantern because I decided that. Obviously, Hal Jordan is the embodiment of willpower. Otherwise, he would not be the Green Lantern of Earth. He shows courage, a lack of fear in the face of adversity, and he was one of the first superheroes, I think, because of his setting and the fact that he was based in space and he was the space cadet, that instead of it being like something like the X-Men, where it's very obviously about it's race related, the characters and things like that, Green Lantern was able to tackle real life problems in a completely out there way because it can all happen on other planets.
I mean, it's sci-fi, right?
It is. It's sci-fi, and so with classic sci-fi, you put in messages, and I thought that was brilliant. And I think what was even more brilliant is in the 70s. I think 70s, quite early Green Lantern stuff. They kind of did a 180 almost, and they brought it crashing back down to Earth. When they had this
like a meteor,
with this brilliant confrontation between himself and an African American who says, you help these blue people on this planet and these green people on this planet. What have you ever done for the blacks on your own planet? And it's that kind of approaching real life situations and its lack of fear to do things like that, and Hal Jordan's lack of fear to do things like that I think makes him one of the best superheroes.
Okay, well, Animal Man, let's, make no mistake about it. Pre-Crisis on Infinite Earths, he was just one of these B-list DC characters, not really up to much, not very interesting. And then he was lucky enough to be part of this wave of DC bringing in British creators to revive some of the lesser known heroes. They brought in Alan Moore on Swamp Thing, they brought in Neil Gaiman for Sandman, and they brought in a little Scottish fellow, I don't know.
Is he little?
I don't know, probably not.
No.
They brought in Grant Morrison to write
Such build up, bring it down.
Animal Man, which we've talked about before, I'm not going to go into now. It's incredible.
We love it.
Incredible running comics. And since then, he has always been, Grant Morrison has popularized him, and since then he's been in stories, he's been in kind of miniseries here and there. I mean, Grant Morrison's run ended at, I think, at about 26 or something like that, and the comic ran on till 50s, 60s. Peter Milligan, who I really enjoy, had a go at Animal Man. Recently, of course, we have this whole Rot World thing. But what I think is great about Animal Man is just how he's one of these characters that should on paper be corny, shouldn't work, but time and time again we find these really cool, interesting, unique takes on him and unique takes on his powers and how they operate and how they work.
Well, I think the great thing is Animal Man really does have a great power of this kind of being able to possess the power of animals. I think it's actually a really cool power, especially on paper. It makes sense and stuff.
But that can also be explored that you don't really think, like relative strength and stuff like that. You take the strength of an insect and you get the relative strength and things like that can be explored.
Which is brilliant. And if you look on paper, a power that should not work, it should be a ring that has the ability to manifest anything you think of to help in combat or in any type of situation. That should not work. And
Well,
yet,
it regularly doesn't.
on anything other than the print medium of comic books, I totally agree. Like on the films, it didn't. In the film, it didn't work, and the video games and things like that. But in the comic books, I think it is one of the most unique types of power that you can find. And I feel as though Hal Jordan's just such a interesting character, and I think the mythos behind Green Lantern and the Green Lantern Corps is so interesting. And I think I can sum it up in one simple way, and that is: in brightest day, in blackest night, Green Lantern is out of sight. Animal Man can't win this fight. It's Hal Jordan, and I'm right. Drop the mic. Thinking of that all day.
That's fairly embarrassing for you, I think.
But it happened.
And if I wasn't a Green Lantern fan, I feel like he should lose because of that.
You see, I thought that all day, and I thought it was very clever.
It wasn't that clever.
I hate myself right now.
Green Lantern, I think is great. I think his mythos is completely fantastic and often not explored to the degree that it should be.
Jeff Johns has really nailed it with
absolutely
Reborn and
I think Animal Man is great, and I love that he's a family man, and I love that I love his stories. But I think Green Lantern embodies so much, and I think he deserves to go through on this.
He doesn't want to admit it. It was the rap that did it.
The rap, honestly...
Moving on! So the next pairing we have is Iron Man...
If you're going to rap again, I don't want any part of it.
No, but I might break out into Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
Iron Man versus Barbara Gordon.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you go first.
Okay. Well, Barbara Gordon, I believe, was a kind of spin-off from the campy Batman TV series, I believe, and then they kind of made her into comics. She really...
I hope that's right, because if not...
Well, I'm sure people will let me know it isn't. She really came into her own. She gets shot by the Joker in Alan Moore's The Killing Joke. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, unprecedented, becomes this icon for kind of the disabled comics reader. She becomes Oracle. She becomes a wheelchair-bound superhero that is completely effective. She becomes, this character Oracle has been so embedded up until the New 52 in the Batman and in the comic book mythos. Gail Simone, celebrated writer, wrote Birds of Prey, which was I haven't read it, but I've heard great things about it, whereby you have Oracle as this backseat pulling the strings. We get that there, we get that in Batman, and she just became really this incredible icon with this backstory that was never intended. And that's one of the beautiful things about comics, is that sometimes you have these stories, you have these characters that just by sheer accident fall into themselves. And like I was talking about Tim Drake a couple of weeks ago, we have the New 52 Batgirl, and that's what Gail Simone has said, sort of, let's look at that as if it's pre-Killing Joke, whatever, fine, whatever. But I think she defines what's great about comics, falling into themselves and becoming icons for people, for a diverse group of people.
Cool. So Iron Man, Tony Stark, is the coolest person ever created in any medium ever, in my opinion. Comic books, film, games, books, any of it. Iron Man is the coolest because he embodies everything that you want to be. He is a genius.
An alcoholic.
Gotta look. I've always wanted to be an alcoholic. I just don't have the money for it. He's rich. He's successful. He fights crime. He's witty. He's all these amazing traits. I mean, and so that should kind of make him like one of these annoying Superman characters who has it all. But the great thing about Iron Man is that he is flawed. He's not a superpowered superhero. His superpower is money, and the fact that he can just finance all these wonderful gadgets and gizmos and then use them at his disposal to help save the world and things like that is absolutely incredible. I also believe that he is the most charismatic member of the Avengers, and I think there's very little arguing that. He really holds that team together, and he really makes it what it is. And I think whatever story he's involved with, especially on the big group things, he really does make special. And as well as being a flawed character with the lack of superpowers, he's a character who has battled alcoholism, as you alluded to earlier, and, just all sorts of other crippling emotional problems, and he's overcome them. And I think there's something really fascinating in a character about that.
I agree with all those things, but I do feel like there's nothing about Iron Man, and I like Iron Man. There's nothing about there's nothing about Iron Man that you've just mentioned that's original. Like all the stuff where it's like, oh, he's using his money, he's using his intelligence. Well, we got that in Batman. The kind of character, oh, the men want to be him, the women want to fuck him. We get that in tons of characters. That's a kind of thing that's throughout every genre.
Need in comic books.
The kind of cool, suave, kind of hint of arrogance. And it's yeah, but it's self-confident, and it's a great mix in Iron Man. It is, but what he doesn't have, because he didn't by accident fall into it, was this really kind of rich association with a group of people that you wouldn't expect. The fact that Barbara Gordon was this hero, this wheelchair-bound hero by accident. I think is amazing and unique, and we've never had anything like it. And with the New 52, we now don't have anything like it, and that's a shame. And I just think that is so interesting, and it so defines comics, and I don't think Iron Man even touches that level of uniqueness.
Well, no, I don't think that's what Iron Man's trying to do. And as far as Barbara Gordon being a kind of this great symbol for disability in the superhero world, Daredevil, I think, is a much better symbol. This is a blind man fighting crime. I think
it's not really the same, because this is a blind man who sees better than any seeing man. And not only that like his blindness has made his powers. I don't want to get into a Daredevil argument.
We're not going back there. You can go and see last week all about that.
But Barbara Gordon is not superhuman in any way. She's a woman, and empowered. But the way that she interacts with the people in the DC universe, the way that she exists, is a way that is a completely grounded in realism. It's a way that people do exist, and the idea that you lose it, you lose part of yourself and then gain others, but in not in a Daredevil superhero sense, but in a real grounded sense, I think is just fantastic and is untouchable.
I agree. I think that's a very strong trait to have in a character. Whether that makes them a great character, I don't know.
I think it does. I think it does, because she's been written so well. She's had great writers in Gail Simone, and not only has she been the kind of disabled figure, but she's also been just a hugely brilliant figure for women. Constantly Batgirl has been a character that hasn't, in one of our big issues we talked about sexism, constantly Batgirl hasn't been that character. She's been a strong woman. She's fully covered up from head to toe. She's never had to rely on her assets. She's always relied on her intelligence and her skill. And I think that is completely unique as well. So we have those two things where she can operate on those both different levels, and just by accident, just because this is a character that fell into that. I don't think Tony Stark.
But I feel as though I disagree. I think Tony Stark, he did fall into becoming a superhero. He wasn't born with an arc reactor in his chest. He was kidnapped and turned into this. Through adversity, he had to become something better.
Well, no, I don't really mean in a fictional sense. I mean in just there are a sequence of things that just happen to happen for the created Batgirl. Whereas Iron Man as a character was plotted, and he was plotted in a way which works, is great, but in a way that there's nothing about Iron Man that we haven't seen in other characters, like I've alluded to. Even his kind of battle with alcoholism sort of feels to me like a bit of a let's, all of these characters have to have vices. Let's give Tony Stark alcohol.
But I feel as though it was such a big, like, obvious vice almost for its time. It's not something that comic books battled because it's a bit too real. And that's not something we like to associate.
Speedy
with
had a
comic books.
heroin problem.
Well, yeah, and that all kind of came at the same time. And
It was, again, he was.
But
yeah, he was a
Speedy's
product
the
of it.
sidekick, whereas Iron Man's the hero. Iron Man's the guy you look up to, and you're seeing him battle with alcoholism. Like, that's not something you want to see in your hero, your main character. And I think it's really a sign of adversity that he overcame that. And not only that, but I think the fact that he's been a staple figure in the Marvel universe, and he's been so instrumental in all of his stories. Like, I don't think there's a single story that Iron Man's not involved in that he's not been one of the central figures. And I know that's like saying there's not a story Superman's involved in, but he's not involved in, like, he's not a central figure, or Batman or something like that. But I feel as though Tony gives it something that no other character can give it. Spider-Man gives it this humor to it, and Captain America gives it the action and things like that. Iron Man gives it everything you want. Iron Man gives it the action, he gives it the attitude, he gives it the suaveness, the sophistication in a character. And I feel as though, yes, it is a character that we've seen before, but I don't think there's a character that does it better than Tony Stark. And I feel as though he is the original rock and roll scientist, in my opinion. And it's something you see a lot of these days. You've got books like No Airmen that's trying to introduce that, and they're kind of trying to turn Bruce Banner into a bit of that in the Indestructible Hulk. But I think Iron Man is the original scientist rock star.
I guess my final argument for Batgirl, in an attempt to sway this, would be those things. And again, it's hard because I do agree with you. I do think Iron Man is a great character, and I do think all those things are accurate. But the reason I feel Batgirl is because with Iron Man, yes, he has all these traits, but they are traits that you can never, that you just never, you're never going to be like him. Like, he's better looking than anyone that exists. He is
well, except for one guy.
He's suaver and cooler than anyone.
Except for one guy.
But you know what I mean? Like, every pun is at the right time. Like, he's just cocky and arrogant.
Yeah, because he's that character.
He is, but that character doesn't exist. The character that Barbara Gordon does exist.
I don't want to read the character that exists. I want to read the character that's awesome.
Well, I guess that's where we disagree, because I think that I do want to read the characters. I do want to read the character that's real on the page and that's relatable to real people in real circumstances, both as women and as disabled, but also just as a human being. Like, her thoughts and feelings and emotions, I think, have always really connected with me. So
that's fair, but I'm gonna
okay.
Stick with
Well, if you're
Iron
sticking,
Man.
we're gonna have to throw it out to you again. I think Batgirl. You think Iron Man. Let us know in the comments what you think.
Indeed. So that does us for today. Join us on Friday, where we have a very, very hot topic, big issue for you.
We do indeed. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. It's at Comic Book Show 1. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Brightest day, in blackest night, Green Lantern is out of sight.